Hello, everyone. I just want to welcome you to this wonderful discussion of the latter Pauline epistles. This is one of the very important discussion in the New Testament. And in this discussion, one of the things that is going to be covered in these latter Pauline epistles, we're going to cover different epistles, including the prison epistles, pastoral epistles, the book of Hebrews, and the general epistles. These are the things that we're going to cover in this study. So welcome as we are going to go step by step into this wonderful introduction of these important epistles that are going to help us in our study of the New Testament because they provide insight into the early Christian church about its theology and its practical concern. And you notice that each group of letters that are addressed, whether it is pastoral epistles, whether it is general epistles, whether it's a book of Hebrew, all of these are going to help us and are going to help us to understand this truth with regard to this audience of the early Christian church, the recipient of the letters, the themes of each letter, and some issues that are involved in all of this writing. But in this beginning, allow me to begin with pseudepigraphy and the New Testament canon. This is one of the important things that we need to understand in our study of the New Testament letters is this issue of the pseudepigraphy. And you understand that when we talk about pseudepigraphy, this is literally, it means false ascription. And in the details, you understand that this was a practice of writing in the name of another person or ascribing one's own work to another. You notice that for this in our modern time, perhaps this may not be very familiar, but in the ancient times, the ancient writers in antiquity, or you may talk of this was a practice in Jewish and Greco-Roman antiquity. They used to write letters and ascribe that letter to someone else who is perhaps a very influential person. Perhaps it was a revered teacher, or perhaps it was a prominent church leader, or a prophet, or an apostle. So someone could write a letter and name that letter just like it has been written by someone else while it's not that person who wrote it, and that's the reason it is called a false ascription. So that is literally that is false ascription, that someone write in the name of another person, and that letter may circulate, and people may think that, oh, perhaps this letter was written by this person, and actually is not that person who wrote it, but they've just used his name. So that this is something that you really need to understand. So we have different examples. We have like the apocalypse and testaments, like the apocalypse of Abraham, the testament of the 12 patriarchs. So they're produced, and these are part of the pseudepigraphy. So people think that perhaps it is Reuben who wrote it, or perhaps it is Abraham who wrote it, but he only used the name of that prominent person to just make that later perhaps to be popular. Perhaps their ideas may be accepted and all of that. So the different reason, but you notice that when they make such a thing like the apocryphs of Reuben, perhaps the Testament of Reuben. Perhaps they could have said that, oh, it's Reuben who wrote it, or Simeon, but it's not him who wrote it. And so we have such kind of pseudepigraphic writing. We have like First Enoch, Second Baruch, and Fourth Ezra. All of these are part of those pseudepigraphic writing. So it's very important that you familiarize yourself with that. So even in the early Christians and this pseudepigraphical literature were present. And one of the things that is very important that we ask ourselves, the key question in pseudepigraphy, is that it involves the question of whether the New Testament letters were actually written by the people whose name they bear. Because the reason we are learning pseudepigraphy and the New Testament canon is because there have been some scholars who have challenged the understanding of the authorship of the New Testament letters. And they've been asking that when we say, like, the Paul's epistle to Corinthians, was it really written by Paul? Or there's someone else who wrote and used the name of Paul because Paul was an apostle who was prominent and influential. So this has created a discussion. It has created a big discussion, and that's the reason we are learning about this, so that we understand that is the apostle who wrote it, or is someone else. So this is an important question that we really need to ask ourselves. Like the Apocalypse of Paul, I've already talked about the infant gospel of Thomas. We have the Apocryphon of John. These are part of the pseudepigraphical writings, like the Gospel of Thomas. You see, it's like someone wrote in the name of Thomas so that um, later could be accepted, because Thomas was one of the apostles, the disciples of Jesus Christ, or John or Paul. Oh, but in real sense, is not Paul or John or Thomas who wrote that. And that's the reason the study of this pseudepigraphical writing is very important for our understanding of these theories as we learn about these epistles that have been written by Paul, or the epistles in the New Testament. So allow me now to just let you know about some of the very important things, like when you come now to the New Testament, just because of this concept of pseudepigraphy, that there are about 10 letters that have been questioned by these New Testament scholars, but even by other scholars. They question this letter, that were this letter written by the apostle, or is someone else who wrote it? We have Second Thessalonians, Ephesians, Colossians, Timothy, First and Second Timothy, Titus, James, First and Second Peter, and Jude. These are 10 question letters. So even when you study the New Testament and you studying this letter, you meet with some ideas that this letter are challenged, and some of scholars, they refer to these letters as Deutero-Pauline letters, meaning secondary letters of Paul. It's like they're saying that perhaps this letter were written after Paul's death by someone else who who felt qualified to address the church in Paul's name. So they're kind of questioning that, no, it's not Paul who wrote it, but perhaps there's someone else who wrote this letter. And that's the reason they call it Deutero-Pauline letter. So when you are studying these letters, you need to familiarize yourself with debates about the authorship, and you understand that this is because of the notion that has been created by some by scholars just because of these pseudepigraphic writings that were present even in the New Testament times, so that people start questioning that, is it Paul who wrote, or there's someone else who wrote after the death of Paul? So this is something that you need to know as you study. But we also have four letters that are considered as anonymous New Testament letters, that the lighter, they are considered as anonymous, that the lighter or the letters themselves do not name their authors. So they're just there, no any author. uh, the letter is not attributed to anyone. So we have the book of Hebrews, we have First John, Second and Third John. These are considered as anonymous, but we also have seven undisputed letters of Paul. This is very interesting that despite some letters that are criticized, or that they're doubting about the author, or this one that they're considered as anonymous, we have seven that most of the scholars agree that these were written by Paul. We have Romans, we have First and Second Corinthians, we have Galatians, Philippians, First Thessalonians, and Philemon. Although you may find out a bit of debate in authorship, but mostly these are the letters that are undisputed. So it's very important that you familiarize yourself with this. So as I end this discussion, allow me now to share with you at least what is considered by some of the scholars of the New Testament studies as the levels of authenticity, especially when it comes to these what they consider as pseudepigraphy, and what they consider as false ascription. So there are levels that uh, those views may be identified with. So the first one is a literal authorship, and in literal authorship, this is a church leader who writes a letter in his own end. So this is what is considered as a literal authorship, that is an author who wrote it. But we also have dictation, and in dictation, this is like a church leader or an author dictates a letter almost word for word to an amanuensis, who will just write all that has been dictated to him. But we also have the delegated authorship. And in the delegated authorship, a church leader or an author describes the basic content of an intended letter to a disciple or to an amanuensis. And then that amanuensis or a disciple will then write the letter for the leader to approve and sign the letter. So it's like the leader provides the core ideas and themes, but the scribe composes the actual prose for the final approval. This is the third level, that is delegated authorship. But we also have a posthumous authorship, where a church leader dies, and after a church leader dies, his disciple finish a letter that he had intended to write and sending it posthumously in his name. So it's like he's already dead, but he intended to write, or he was writing, and then now the disciple will just finish the letter and send it by his name even after the time of his death. But we also have the fourth level, which is identified as apprentice authorship. And in apprentice authorship, a church leader dies, and disciples who had been authorized to speak for him while he was alive continue to do so by writing a letter in his name years or decades after his death. So this is like an authorized successor, like the leader's name years to continue his specific school of thought. So they could write even many years after the author or the one that they ascribe uh, his name to has died, but they will still write the letter and use his name. And if you look at it, you may think that he's the one who wrote it, but it is a different person, but they've only used his name. But we also have honorable pseudepigraphy. And in honorable pseudepigraphy, this also is when a church leader dies and his admirers seek to honor him by writing letters in his name as a kind of a tribute to his influence and in a sincere belief that they are responsible bearers of his tradition. So he's dead, but they will just write a letter to honor him, to remember him as a kind of a tribute to him. And the last one is forgery. So this is the high level of forgery as it is. So in this level, you will notice that a church leader obtains sufficient prominence that is prominent, is a person who is prominent, but it can be either before his death or even after his death. So those people who seek to exploit his legacy by forging letters in his name. So it's simply a forgery. So because this person was or is influential, is prominent, and because they want their thoughts to be desired and to be admired or to be accepted by many people, and they will simply decide to use the name of that prominent person, whether he has been whether he's still alive or even after his death, and they will use his name to circulate the idea, writing the letters, but giving those letters the name of that prominent person. So it's very important that we familiarize ourselves with this, just because that when scholars argue that certain letters are pseudepigraphical, they do not usually jump all the way to often at this level 7 that it's a forgery. No, and claim that this letter is not is a forgery, but most of the time they will range between level 4, that is posthumous authorship, all the way to level 6, that perhaps the letter was written after that the leader died, and they wanted to continue his writing and send the letter in his name, or they're doing that as a kind of a person who was left behind that could continue his thoughts, or as a kind of honoring the person, or a person that leader who is influential. So most of the time is not a forgery. So this is something that is very important, that you familiarize yourself. But as we study the New Testament letters, you notice that the New Testament letters are not part of the pseudepigraphical writings, because if they were part of it, they could not be included in the New Testament canon. And when we talk about pseudepigraphical writing in the New Testament, we mostly focus on understanding why we have these concerns, especially with regard to authorship, where people doubt or question the authorship of Paul. but it's because of this practice of that was done in the ancient time, where someone could write a letter and ascribe that letter to a prominent person who has not written it. So stay tuned as we move on with our study of this letter Pauline epistles, so that we get a broader understanding of the New Testament, especially the letters of the New Testament. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next presentation.